The dust from the stagecoach still hung in the air when Adelaide Lancaster stepped down onto the sun-baked street of San Elizario, Texas, knowing that within the hour everyone in this God-forsaken town would know exactly what she was. August 1876 brought a heat that shimmered off the ground like water, but it was nothing compared to the burning shame she carried in her belly, 5 months along and showing despite the looseness of her traveling dress. She clutched her single carpetbag tighter, scanning the handful of weathered buildings that comprised the main street, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake coming here at all. A letter from her Aunt Ruth had arrived 3 months ago, back when Adelaide still lived in St. Louis, back when she still had hoped that Thomas would return and make an honest woman of her. The letter had been kind but firm, offering Adelaide refuge in this small Texas border town where her aunt worked as a seamstress. But Aunt Ruth had died 2 weeks before Adelaide managed to scrape together the fare for the journey west. A second letter, this one from a neighbor, had delivered that news, but by then Adelaide had already sold everything she owned, already burned every bridge behind her. The stagecoach driver dropped her trunk in the dirt without ceremony, tipped his hat without meeting her eyes, and climbed back onto his rig. Adelaide watched him leave, fighting the urge to run after him, to beg him to take her anywhere but here. Instead, she stood alone on that empty street, one hand unconsciously moving to the swell of her belly beneath her shawl. "You looking lost, miss." The voice came from behind her, deep and unhurried. Adelaide turned to find a man watching her from the shade of a covered boardwalk. He was tall, lean in the way of men who spent their lives working hard and eating light, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of summer grass. A worn hat shadowed his face, but she could see the concern there, absent of the judgment she had braced herself for. "I am looking for Ruth Lancaster," Adelaide said, lifting her chin despite everything. "She lives here or lived here. I am her niece." The man stepped out into the sunlight, and Adelaide noticed the easy grace of his movements, the confident set of his shoulders. He looked to be in his mid-20s, perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that curled at his collar and needed cutting. He wore the practical clothes of a working man, a cattleman by the look of it, his shirt dusty and his boots scuffed. "Ruth passed 3 weeks back," he said gently. "I am real sorry. She was a good woman, never had a harsh word for anybody. I am Quincy Steadman. I have a ranch about 5 miles north of here, came into town for supplies." Adelaide felt her last thread of hope snap. She swayed slightly, the heat and the long journey and the weight of her situation all crashing down at once. Quincy closed the distance between them in 2 quick strides, his hand steady on her elbow. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "Yesterday morning, I think." The stage stops were not frequent. He guided her toward the boardwalk into the shade. "There is a hotel here and a restaurant that serves decent enough food. Let me help you with your things." "I cannot afford a hotel," Adelaide said, the admission burning in her throat. "I have maybe $3 to my name, and that has to last until I find work." Quincy studied her for a long moment, those green eyes taking in everything, the worn dress, the careful way she held herself, the telltale roundness she could no longer hide. Adelaide braced herself for it, for the coldness that would enter his expression, the way he would make an excuse and walk away like every other decent person had done once they knew. "The hotel is run by Maria Santos," Quincy said instead. "She is always needing help with the laundry and the cooking. Room and board in exchange for work. I will introduce you if you like." Adelaide stared at him, searching for the catch, for the cruel jest. "You do not even know me." "I know you came a long way to see your aunt and that you got nobody here now. I know you are about to fall over from heat and hunger. That is enough for now." He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing. "Come on. Food first, then we will talk to Maria." The restaurant was a small adobe building with thick walls that kept out the worst of the heat. Inside, a handful of tables sat on a packed earth floor, and the smell of beans and tortillas made Adelaide's stomach clench with sudden, desperate hunger. Quincy settled her at a corner table and went to order food from a woman who emerged from the back kitchen area. Adelaide watched him speak to the woman in easy Spanish, his accent better than she would have expected from an Anglo rancher. The woman glanced over at Adelaide, her expression unreadable, then nodded and disappeared back into the kitchen. Quincy returned with 2 glasses of water. "Food will be up in a minute," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "Maria is making you something mild. Figured your stomach might need it after the journey." "You speak Spanish," Adelaide observed, grateful for any conversation that did not touch on her circumstances. "Most folks do, this close to the border. San Elizario has been here longer than Texas has been a state. My father bought the ranch from a Mexican family back in '58, and they taught me everything about running cattle in this country. Cannot do that without the language." He paused. "Where are you from originally?" "St. Louis. My aunt left there 20 years ago after her husband died. She wrote me letters sometimes, told me about Texas." Adelaide wrapped her hands around the water glass, condensation cool against her palms. "I have not seen her since I was a child." The food arrived, and Adelaide had to force herself not to simply fall on it like a starving animal. Beans, rice, fresh tortillas still warm from the griddle, and strips of seasoned beef. She ate slowly, aware of Quincy's eyes on her, but when she glanced up, he was not looking at her with pity or disgust, just quiet concern. "Thank you," she said when she had taken the edge off her hunger. "You did not have to do this. My mother raised me better than to let a lady go hungry." He leaned back in his chair. "Truth is, San Elizario could use more decent folks. A lot of the women left after the Salt War troubles back in '77, and we have not quite recovered. Maria will be glad for the help, assuming you are serious about working." "I will work any honest job I can get," Adelaide said firmly. "I am not afraid of hard labor. Even in your condition," there it was. Adelaide set down her fork, meeting his eyes steadily. "Especially in my condition. I have a child coming in 4 months and I need to provide. So yes, Mr. Steadman, I will scrub floors and wash linens and do whatever else needs doing, for as long as I am able." "It is Quincy," he said quietly. "And I was not judging, Miss Lancaster, just making sure you know what you are getting into. Laundry work is hard in this heat." Adelaide felt something crack inside her chest, some tight knot of tension she had been carrying since St. Louis. He was not judging. This stranger, this cowboy with kind eyes, was not judging her. "Adelaide," she managed. "And yes, I know, I am not afraid." "Good." Quincy stood, leaving money on the table. "Let us go talk to Maria Santos about that room." The hotel was 3 buildings down, a 2-story adobe structure with a wooden sign that read Santos Hotel in fading paint. Maria Santos herself was a formidable woman in her 50s, with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She looked Adelaide up and down when Quincy made his introduction, and Adelaide forced herself not to look away. "You know how to do laundry?" Maria asked in English that carried only the faintest accent. "Yes, madam. Cooking. Basic cooking, yes. I can learn more. Cleaning, of course." Maria tapped her fingers on the counter of the small lobby. "I have 4 rooms upstairs for guests and I live in the back. You would get a small room off the kitchen. Nothing fancy. Meals included, and I will pay you $2 a week on top of the room and board. You work 6 days, Sunday off. Laundry goes out Monday and Thursday. You help with cooking and cleaning the rest of the time. I do not tolerate laziness, drinking, or men in your room. That all sounds more than fair, Adelaide said, relief flooding through her. I see you are carrying, Maria continued matter-of-factly. That going to be a problem? Adelaide's hand moved protectively to her belly. The baby is not due until late December. I can work until then, and after I have recovered I will continue working. I will not be a burden. Maria looked at Quincy. You vouch for this girl. She is Ruth Lancaster's niece, Quincy said. Ruth would want us to look after her. Ruth Lancaster was good people. Maria turned back to Adelaide. All right, you can start tomorrow. Quincy, help her bring her things around to the back entrance. The room was small, barely large enough for a narrow bed, a washstand, and a trunk, but it had a window that let in light and a door that locked. Adelaide stood in the center of it after Quincy had brought up her trunk, trying not to cry from sheer relief. You need anything else? Quincy asked from the doorway. No, you have done more than enough. I do not know how to thank you. No thanks needed. He hesitated, then added, San Elizario is a small town, Adelaide. Folks will talk, that is just how it is. But most people here are decent enough if you give them a chance. Do not let the gossip chase you off. I have nowhere else to go, Adelaide said simply. So the gossip will have to learn to live with me. Something that might have been approval flickered in Quincy's eyes. That is a good attitude. I will be around town tomorrow if you need anything. Maria knows where to find me. After he left, Adelaide sank onto the bed and let herself feel the full weight of everything that had happened. 3 months ago, she had been a respectable young woman with a job at a dress shop and plans to marry Thomas Harrison, the charming merchant's son who had courted her so ardently. Then had come the night he had persuaded her to give in to his advances, promising they would be married within the month anyway. So what did it matter? It had mattered very much when she had told him about the baby and he had disappeared, taking with him $200 from his father's safe and leaving behind nothing but debt and scandal. Adelaide's employer had dismissed her the moment her condition became apparent, and her landlady had given her a week to vacate the boarding house. Even her few friends had turned away, unwilling to associate with a fallen woman. Only Aunt Ruth's letter had offered any hope, and now Ruth was dead, and Adelaide was alone in a strange town, carrying a child that would be born a bastard. But Quincy Steadman had not turned away. He had fed her, helped her find work and shelter, treated her like a human being worthy of basic decency. It was more than she had dared hope for. The next morning, Adelaide woke before dawn to the sound of Maria moving around in the kitchen. She dressed quickly, splashed water on her face, and went to see what needed doing. Maria put her to work immediately, showing her where things were kept, how she liked the breakfast prepared, and what standards she expected for cleaning. The work was hard, but Adelaide threw herself into it, grateful to have something to occupy her hands and mind. 2 guests came down for breakfast, older men who nodded politely at her, but said nothing beyond ordering their food. Adelaide served them with quiet efficiency, aware of their eyes following her, aware that they could surely see her condition despite the loose apron Maria had provided. After breakfast, Maria showed her the laundry setup out back, a series of large tubs and a wringer, with clotheslines strung between posts. Monday and Thursday, Maria repeated. Guest linens, towels, and my personal washing. You will also help the other women in town with their laundry for extra money if you want. They bring it here, you wash it. Everyone makes a little extra. I would like that, Adelaide said. Any extra money would go toward preparing for the baby. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Adelaide scrubbed floors, changed linens, helped prepare lunch. The heat was oppressive, even inside the thick adobe walls, and by noon she was exhausted. But Maria seemed satisfied with her work, which was all that mattered. Quincy appeared around midday, ostensibly to pick up a package Maria had been holding for him, but Adelaide noticed how his eyes sought her out, checking to make sure she was managing all right. She gave him a small smile and a nod, and he tipped his hat before leaving. "That Quincy Steadman is a good man," Maria said, watching him go. "Lost his parents to fever 5 years back, runs that ranch all on his own now. Works harder than 3 men combined. He could have sold out and gone east, but he loves this land." "He was very kind to me yesterday," Adelaide said carefully. "Quincy is kind to everyone, but he does not usually go out of his way like that." Maria gave her a knowing look. "He saw something in you worth helping, I think." Adelaide did not know what to say to that, so she focused on her work instead. The first Sunday came, and Adelaide used her day off to explore San Elizario properly. The town was small, clustered around an old Spanish mission church that dominated the plaza. A handful of shops lined the main street, and beyond that, scattered houses and small farms stretched toward the horizon. The Rio Grande was only a few miles south, and Mexico even closer. Adelaide attended services at the mission church, slipping into a back pew and keeping her head down. The priest, an elderly man with gentle eyes, gave the mass in a mixture of Spanish and English. Adelaide found comfort in the familiar rhythms, even if she felt like a hypocrite being there in her condition. After the service, several women approached her, introducing themselves with varying degrees of warmth. Some were genuinely welcoming, others merely curious, and a few kept their distance, their disapproval clear. Adelaide thanked them all politely and made her way back to the hotel, feeling drained. She found Quincy waiting on the hotel's front step, his hat in his hands. "Thought you might like to see the ranch," he said without preamble. "It is a nice ride, and the weather is cooler today than it has been." Adelaide hesitated. "I do not want to impose on your Sunday." "You are not imposing, I am inviting." He gestured to a wagon hitched nearby. "Besides, I thought you might appreciate getting out of town for a bit." "I know the first week in a new place can be overwhelming." It was overwhelming, and the thought of spending a few hours away from the curious stares and whispered conversations was deeply appealing. "All right, thank you." The ride north took about 40 minutes, the wagon rolling over dirt roads that cut through scrubland dotted with mesquite and creosote. Quincy pointed out landmarks as they went, telling her about the area, the challenges of raising cattle in this harsh country, the delicate balance of water rights and grazing land. "My father bought 500 acres, Quincy explained. "We run maybe 200 head of cattle now, down from 300 a few years back. Had a bad drought that killed off a lot of the herd, but we are rebuilding." "You said we," Adelaide observed. "Habit. It is just me now and 2 hands who help with the heavy work. Miguel and his son Carlos, they live in a house on the southern section of the property. Good men, been with the ranch since before my father died." The ranch house came into view, a low adobe structure with a covered porch and a tin roof that gleamed in the sunlight. It was modest but well-maintained, with corrals and a barn nearby. Horses grazed in a fenced pasture, and Adelaide could see cattle in the distance. Quincy helped her down from the wagon, and Adelaide felt suddenly nervous about being here, alone with him. But Quincy seemed oblivious to any impropriety, leading her toward the house with easy confidence. "Not much to see inside," he said, opening the door. "I am not much for decorating." The interior was sparse but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, and what looked like 2 bedrooms off to the side. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and simple wooden furniture filled the space. It was a bachelor's home, lacking any woman's touch, but it felt solid and safe. "It is a good house," Adelaide said honestly. "You keep it well." "I try. My mother taught me to take care of things properly." He moved to the kitchen area, pumping water into a kettle. "I will make us some coffee if you drink it." "I do, thank you." They sat on the porch while the coffee brewed, looking out over the land. The silence was comfortable, and Adelaide found herself relaxing in a way she had not been able to since arriving in San Elizario. "Can I ask you something?" Quincy said eventually. Adelaide tensed. "I suppose. What made you decide to come all the way to Texas? You could have stayed in St. Louis, found work there." "No one in St. Louis would hire me once they knew," Adelaide said quietly. "And the few places that would have taken me were not the kind of places I wanted to be. My aunt's letter seemed like a lifeline, a chance to start over somewhere no one knew my history." "But everyone here will know soon enough," Quincy pointed out gently. "That is the nature of small towns." "Yes, but here I do not have to see the disappointment in the eyes of people who knew me before. Here I am just a woman in difficult circumstances, not a cautionary tale about what happens to foolish girls who trust the wrong men." Adelaide stopped, surprised at her own bitterness. Quincy was quiet for a moment. "The man who did this to you, he is not standing by you. He disappeared the moment I told him, stole money from his own father and ran." Adelaide laughed without humor. "I was such a fool. He said all the right things, made all the right promises. I believed him." "That does not make you a fool. It makes him a coward and a liar." The simple certainty in Quincy's voice made Adelaide's throat tighten. "Most people do not see it that way. Most people think I got what I deserved for being loose. Most people are idiots." Quincy stood to check on the coffee. "You made a mistake in trusting someone who turned out to be unworthy. That is not a moral failing. It is just bad luck." He poured them both coffee, and they drank it in companionable silence. Adelaide felt something shifting inside her, some of the shame she had been carrying loosening its grip. Quincy did not treat her like she was ruined or shameful. He treated her like a person deserving of respect, and that simple act of acceptance was more healing than he could possibly know. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked finally. Quincy considered the question. "My mother had a difficult life before she married my father. She never talked about it much, but I gathered she had some troubles, came west to escape them. My father loved her anyway, gave her a home and a family, and never once made her feel less than worthy. She told me once that everyone deserves a second chance, that the worst thing we can do is judge people for their past instead of giving them a future." He met Adelaide's eyes. "I guess I took that to heart." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was. I miss her every day." Quincy set down his cup. "Point is, Adelaide, you do not have to face this alone. I know we just met, but San Elizario is my town, and I would like to think we look after our own here. You are one of ours now, whether you plan to be or not." "Thank you," Adelaide whispered. "That means more than you know." The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Adelaide worked hard at the hotel, and Maria seemed pleased with her efforts. The other women in town gradually warmed to her, especially after she started taking in extra laundry, and proved herself a skilled hand with difficult stains and delicate fabrics. She was never going to be fully accepted by the more respectable matrons, but she found her place among the working women, the ones who understood that life was hard and judgment was a luxury. Quincy came into town regularly, always finding an excuse to stop by the hotel. Sometimes he brought Adelaide small gifts, a basket of peaches from a tree on his property. A book he thought she might enjoy, a length of soft fabric he claimed someone had given him but he had no use for. Adelaide treasured each offering, knowing what they represented. They were courting, she realized one day in late September, though neither of them had acknowledged it aloud. Quincy was courting her, and she was letting him, and the whole thing felt both terrifying and wonderful. "He is going to ask you to marry him," Maria said one evening as they prepared dinner. "You know that, right?" Adelaide nearly dropped the pot she was holding. "Do not be ridiculous. We are just friends." "Friends," Maria snorted. "That man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you light up every time he walks in the room. The only people who do not see it are the two of you, apparently. Even if that were true, why would he want to marry me?" Adelaide gestured at her belly, now prominently rounded at 7 months. "I am carrying another man's child, and he does not care. Quincy Steadman is a man who knows his own mind, and he has decided you are worth loving. The baby is just part of the package." Maria softened slightly. "You could do a lot worse than him, Adelaide. He is a good man with a good heart and a good ranch. He would take care of you." "I cannot marry someone just because they would take care of me," Adelaide protested. "That is not fair to him. Who said anything about just? I see the way you look at him, too. You are half in love with him already, whether you admit it or not." Adelaide could not deny it. Somewhere between that first day when Quincy had fed her and found her work, and now she had fallen for him. His quiet kindness, his steady presence, the way he treated her like she mattered. She looked forward to his visits with an intensity that scared her, and she dreamed about him at night, dreams where they were together properly, where her past did not matter and the future was full of possibility. But she was also terrified. What if Maria was wrong? What if Quincy was just being kind, and Adelaide was reading too much into his friendship? Worse, what if he did care for her but eventually came to resent the child, the constant reminder that she had belonged to another man first? The question was answered on a cool October evening. Quincy arrived at sunset and asked Adelaide if she would take a walk with him. They strolled toward the old mission church, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple, and Quincy seemed nervous in a way Adelaide had never seen before. "I have been thinking," he started, then stopped. "That is, I wanted to ask you something, but I want to do it right." Adelaide's heart hammered in her chest. "All right. I know we have not known each other long. 3 months is not much time in the grand scheme of things. But I feel like I know you, Adelaide. I know you are strong and brave and kind. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever met. I know you have a laugh that makes me want to hear it again and again." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I know I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life and see you there." "Quincy," Adelaide breathed. "Let me finish, please." He took her hands in his, and his palms were calloused and warm. "I am not a rich man. The ranch does okay, but it is hard work, and there will be lean years along with the good ones. I cannot promise you luxury. But I can promise you a home and respect and love. So much love, Adelaide. More than you probably want from a rough cowboy who does not always know the right words." "You are doing fine with the words," Adelaide managed, tears streaming down her face. "I know you are carrying a child that is not mine. I do not care. That baby will be ours if you will have me. I will love it like my own because it is part of you, and I love you. I have loved you since that first day, I think, when you stood in that dusty street with your chin up and your eyes full of fear and determination. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and I would be honored if you would marry me." Adelaide could barely see him through her tears. "I do not understand. Why me? You could have anyone." "I do not want anyone, I want you." He reached up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I know you are scared. I know you have been hurt and you do not trust easily. I will wait as long as you need." But please, Adelaide, please say you will at least think about it. Yes, Adelaide said, the word bursting out of her. Yes, I will marry you. I do not need to think about it. Quincy stared at her. Yes, yes, Adelaide laughed, the sound bright and incredulous. I love you too, Quincy. I have been afraid to let myself feel it, but I do. I love you so much it terrifies me. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. Adelaide melted into him, feeling safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were grinning like fools. We should probably tell Maria, Quincy said. And the priest. How fast do you want to do this? Fast, Adelaide said firmly. Before you come to your senses. I am not changing my mind. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Let us go tell everyone you are about to become Mrs. Steadman. They were married a week later in the mission church, with Maria and her husband standing as witnesses, and half the town packed into the pews. Adelaide wore a simple dress that Maria had helped her make, the fabric pale blue and loose enough to accommodate her belly. Quincy wore his best clothes and looked so handsome Adelaide could barely breathe. Father Miguel performed the ceremony in English for Adelaide's benefit, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, Quincy kissed her again, deeper this time, and the whole church erupted in applause and cheers. Even the women who had been cool to Adelaide before seemed caught up in the romance of it all. This cowboy rancher marrying the pregnant stranger and claiming her child as his own. The reception was held at the hotel, with Maria outdoing herself on the food and several of the townsmen providing music. Adelaide danced with Quincy until her feet hurt, laughing at his whispered comments and jokes, feeling lighter than she had in months. Ready to go home? He asked as the evening wound down. Home. Adelaide tested the word in her mind and found it fit perfectly. Yes. Take me home, husband. The ride to the ranch in the darkness felt like a dream. Quincy had prepared the house for her arrival, and Adelaide found fresh flowers on the table and the bedroom cleaned and aired out. He carried her over the threshold despite her protests about her weight, and then they were alone, truly alone as husband and wife. I will sleep in the other room, Quincy said quickly, until after the baby comes. I do not want to risk anything. Adelaide caught his hand. Stay, just hold me tonight, please. So he did, and they lay together in the bed, Quincy's arms wrapped around her, his hand resting on her belly. Adelaide felt the baby kick against his palm and heard his sharp intake of breath. That is amazing, he murmured. Hello in there, little one. I am your papa now. Adelaide cried again. But this time they were tears of joy, of gratitude, of overwhelming love for this man who had given her back her life. The following months were the happiest Adelaide had ever known. She settled into ranch life with surprising ease, learning to care for the chickens, tend the small garden, cook hearty meals for Quincy and the ranch hands. Her belly grew larger, and Quincy fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest, bringing her anything she needed. Miguel and Carlos, the ranch hands, treated her with respectful warmth. Miguel's wife Rosa lived in town but visited often, and she became Adelaide's first real friend in San Elizario, teaching her about the herbs and remedies used by the local women, sharing stories and laughter. Adelaide felt the baby move constantly now, strong kicks and rolls that made her breathless. Quincy loved to feel it, spending his evenings with his hand on her belly, talking to the baby about the ranch, the cattle, the life they would have together. What should we name him? He asked one night in early December. Or her, I suppose we should have names for both. I like Emma for a girl, Adelaide said. After your mother, if that is all right with you. Quincy's eyes went suspiciously bright. I would like that very much. What about for a boy? They debated it for days. finally settling on James after Adelaide's father, who had died when she was young. James, or Emma Steadman, loved and wanted and claimed. The baby came on a cold night in late December, 2 weeks before Adelaide's expected date. She woke to contractions around midnight, and Quincy immediately rode into town to fetch Rosa, who served as the local midwife. Then he paced the house like a caged animal while Adelaide labored. It was not an easy birth. The baby was large and the labor long, lasting through the night and into the following afternoon. Rosa stayed calm and encouraging, but Adelaide could see the worry in her eyes as the hours dragged on. Quincy refused to leave, holding Adelaide's hand, letting her squeeze until his bones creaked, murmuring words of love and encouragement. Finally, as the sun began to set on the second day, the baby came in a rush of pain and relief. Rosa caught the infant, clearing its mouth and nose, and a lusty wail filled the room. "A boy," Rosa announced, smiling. "A big, healthy boy." She cleaned the baby and wrapped him in soft blankets before placing him in Adelaide's arms. Adelaide looked down at her son, at his red face and dark hair and waving fists, and fell completely in love. He was perfect, absolutely perfect. "Hello, James," she whispered. "Welcome to the world, my darling." Quincy leaned over them both, his face full of wonder. "He is beautiful, Adelaide." "You did so well. Would you like to hold him?" Adelaide offered. Quincy took the baby with careful hands, and Adelaide watched her husband cradle her son against his chest. James settled immediately, his crying stopping as if he recognized safety when he felt it. "Hello, son," Quincy said softly. "I am your papa, and I promise you, I will love you and protect you for all of my days. You and your mama both." Adelaide knew in that moment that everything she had been through, all the pain and shame and fear, had been worth it to arrive here, in this room with this man and this child. This was her family, her real family, and they were everything she had ever wanted. The first weeks with James were exhausting and wonderful. He was a hungry baby, nursing constantly, and Adelaide felt like she barely slept. But Quincy helped however he could, changing diapers, walking James when he was fussy, bringing Adelaide food and water while she fed the baby. "You are too good at this," Adelaide teased one night, watching Quincy expertly soothe James back to sleep. "You sure you have not done this before?" "I helped with calves and foals," Quincy said with a grin. "Same principle mostly. Did you just compare our son to a calf? A very cute calf." Adelaide threw a pillow at him, and they both dissolved into quiet laughter, careful not to wake the baby. January turned to February, and Adelaide began to feel like herself again. She and Quincy had not yet been intimate, both of them cautious about rushing things, but the tension was there, growing stronger each day. They kissed often, deep kisses that left them both breathless and wanting more. Quincy would pull away, his breathing ragged, and Adelaide would lie awake at night aching for him. Finally, on a night in late February when James was sleeping soundly in his cradle, Adelaide caught Quincy's hand as he started to pull away from a kiss. "Stay," she said. "I am healed, Quincy. Rosa said everything is fine, and I want you, I want my husband, are you sure?" His voice was rough with need. "I do not want to hurt you, you could never hurt me." Adelaide pulled him back down to her. "Love me, Quincy, please." He did, with such tenderness and care that Adelaide cried from the sweetness of it. This was nothing like her fumbling, rushed encounter with Thomas. This was making love in the truest sense, Quincy worshipping her body with his hands and mouth, murmuring endearments, making sure she found her pleasure before seeking his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Quincy's hand tracing lazy patterns on her hip. "I love you," Adelaide said into the darkness. "I do not think I have told you enough how much. You show me every day," Quincy replied, kissing her forehead, "but I never get tired of hearing it. I love you too, Adelaide, more than I knew it was possible to love someone." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and Adelaide thought this must be what true happiness felt like. Spring came to the ranch in a burst of wildflowers and new grass. The cattle thrived, and Quincy was able to buy another 50 head with the profits from selling the yearlings. James grew rapidly, becoming a chubby, happy baby who smiled at everyone and slept through the night more often than not. Adelaide threw herself into being a ranch wife with the same determination she had brought to everything else. She learned to preserve food, to make soap and candles, to tend the vegetable garden. She helped Quincy with the bookkeeping, discovering she had a head for numbers that made managing the ranch's finances much easier. Maria came to visit in April, delighted with James and full of news from town. She pulled Adelaide aside while Quincy was showing her husband the new horses they had acquired. "You look happy," Maria said. "Really happy." "I am," Adelaide confirmed. "Happier than I ever thought I could be. Good, you deserve it after everything." Maria squeezed her hand. "That Quincy is a keeper. I know. I thank God for him every day." Summer brought heat that shimmered off the ground and made even simple tasks exhausting. Adelaide took to doing most of her work early in the morning before the worst of the heat set in, spending the afternoons in the coolest part of the house with James. Quincy and the hands worked from before dawn until after dark, moving the cattle to better grazing, repairing fences, breaking new horses. Adelaide worried about Quincy working so hard in the heat, but he always brushed off her concerns with a kiss and a promise to be careful. Still, she made sure he drank plenty of water and ate well, and she rubbed liniment into his sore muscles at night. "What would I do without you?" Quincy asked one evening as her strong hands worked out a knot in his shoulder. "You would be fine," Adelaide said. "You managed before I came along." "I survived. That is not the same as being fine." He turned to face her. "You have made this house a home, Adelaide. You have made my life complete. I did not even realize how lonely I was until you were here filling all those empty spaces." "You did the same for me," Adelaide said softly. "You gave me a life when I thought mine was over. You gave me love when I thought I did not deserve it. You are everything to me, Quincy Steadman." He kissed her then, deep and hungry, and they made love on the bed while James napped in his cradle, the afternoon heat forgotten in the passion they shared. Fall arrived with cooler temperatures and the promise of rain. Quincy hired 2 additional hands for the roundup and cattle drive, planning to take 100 head to market in El Paso. It would be the first time he had left the ranch overnight since Adelaide and James had arrived, and he was clearly torn about going. "We will be fine," Adelaide assured him. "Miguel and Rosa are nearby, and I am perfectly capable of managing things for a few days." "I know you are. I just do not like leaving you." "It is 4 days, Quincy. We will survive." The drive left on a Monday morning, and Adelaide stood on the porch with James in her arms, waving as Quincy and the other men rode off with the cattle. The house felt strange without him, too quiet and empty. But Adelaide kept herself busy with chores and caring for James, and the days passed quickly enough. Quincy returned on Thursday evening, dusty and tired but grinning. The cattle had sold well, bringing in more money than he had hoped. He swept Adelaide into his arms, kissing her soundly, then took James and tossed him gently in the air, making the baby squeal with delight. "I missed you both so much," Quincy said. 4 days felt like forever." "We missed you too," Adelaide replied, "but you did well from the sound of it." "Well enough that I have been thinking." Quincy set James down on a blanket on the floor and pulled Adelaide onto his lap as he settled into his chair. "What would you say to expanding the house? Adding on another room or two? James will need his own room eventually, and maybe there will be brothers or sisters who need space too. Adelaide's heart skipped. Are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying I want more children with you if you want them too. I want a house full of kids and noise and laughter. I want to build a legacy here, something that will last long after we are gone. He cupped her face. But only if that is what you want. I will not pressure you. I want it, Adelaide said immediately. I want everything with you, Quincy. More children, a bigger house, a full life. All of it. Good. He kissed her neck. Then I guess we should start practicing, do not you think? Adelaide laughed, the sound full of joy, and let her husband carry her to bed. The years that followed were full and rich, marked by hard work and deep love. They expanded the house as planned, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. James grew into a bright, energetic toddler with his mother's dark hair and his father's green eyes, and everyone who met him agreed he was the spitting image of Quincy. Adelaide gave birth to a daughter when James was 2, a little girl they named Emma as planned. She was tiny and delicate where James had been robust, with Adelaide's features and a sweet disposition. Quincy doted on his daughter shamelessly, and James took his role as big brother very seriously. 2 years after Emma came another son, whom they named Thomas after Adelaide's father. Thomas was quiet and thoughtful, content to watch the world from his mother's arms. And 3 years after that came another daughter, Lucy, who emerged from the womb yelling and had barely stopped since. The ranch prospered under Quincy's management and Adelaide's careful accounting. They paid off the remaining debt on the land and bought another 200 acres. The herd grew to 400 head, and Quincy took on another permanent hand to help manage the increased workload. Adelaide became a fixture in San Elizario society, respected for her hard work and her devotion to her family. The gossip about her past had long since died down, replaced by admiration for the woman she had become. She organized charity efforts for families in need, taught Sunday school at the mission church, and served as midwife to several women who had once looked down on her. Who would have thought? Maria said one day when she and Adelaide were preparing food for a church social. The scared girl who stepped off that stagecoach is now one of the most respected women in town. I had good teachers, Adelaide replied, squeezing her friend's hand, and a husband who believed in me when no one else did. That Quincy is still crazy about you, Maria observed. I see the way he looks at you, even after all these years, like you are the only woman in the world. Adelaide smiled, thinking of Quincy that morning, kissing her goodbye with the same passion he had shown from the beginning. I am lucky, so incredibly lucky. The children grew and thrived. James showed an early aptitude for working with cattle and horses, following his father everywhere and absorbing everything Quincy taught him. Emma was gentle and kind, helping her mother with the younger children and showing a talent for sewing and cooking. Thomas loved books and learning, and Adelaide taught him to read early, fostering his curious mind. Lucy was wild and fearless, more interested in riding horses than anything domestic, much to Quincy's amused delight. She is going to be a handful, Adelaide said one evening, watching 5-year-old Lucy attempt to rope a fence post like she had seen her father do. She gets that from you, Quincy replied, pulling Adelaide close. That fierce determination to do things her own way. I am not fierce. You are the fiercest person I know. You came to a strange place with nothing but courage and made a life for yourself. That is fierce, Adelaide. She leaned into him, still marveling after all these years at how safe she felt in his arms. I could not have done any of it without you. We make a good team, Quincy agreed, kissing the top of her head. When James turned 12, Quincy began teaching him the finer points of ranch management, taking him on cattle drives and letting him help with the financial decisions. James soaked it all up, proud to be learning his father's trade. Adelaide watched her son grow from boy to young man, seeing so much of Quincy in him that it made her heart ache with love. One night, after the children were all in bed, James came to find his parents on the porch where they often sat in the evenings. "Can I ask you something?" he said, unusually serious. "Of course," Quincy replied. "What is on your mind?" James hesitated, then said, "Tommy Jenkins at school said something today. He said I do not look like you, Pa. He said maybe you are not really my father." Adelaide felt her blood run cold, but Quincy just looked at his son with steady eyes. "What do you think?" Quincy asked. "Do you think I am really your father?" "I know you are," James said immediately. "You have been my father since before I was born. But Tommy said that means someone else is my real father, and I just wanted to know if that is true." Adelaide stood, reaching for her son, but Quincy waved her back gently. This was his conversation to have. "Come here, son." Quincy pulled James down to sit beside him. "Yes, it is true that another man contributed to your birth. Your mother knew him before she came to Texas, before she met me. But that man ran away when your mother needed him most. He was a coward who did not deserve her or you." "So, he is my real father?" James asked, his voice small. "No, being a father is not just about biology, James. It is about showing up every day. It is about loving your child even when they make mistakes, about teaching them right from wrong, about protecting them and providing for them. It is about being there for every scraped knee and bad dream and important moment. I have done all of that for you since the day you were born, and I will continue doing it until the day I die. That makes me your real father in every way that matters." "But I am not really a Steadman then," James said, and Adelaide heard the pain in his voice. "You are absolutely a Steadman." Quincy's voice was firm. "I claimed you as my son legally when I married your mother. Your name is James Steadman, and this ranch will be yours one day, along with your brother and sisters. You are my eldest son, James, and I could not be more proud of you." James was quiet for a long moment. "Do you love me the same as you love Emma and Thomas and Lucy?" "I love you all equally, but differently, because you are all different people. But if you are asking if I love you less because we do not share blood, the answer is absolutely not. You are my son in every way that counts." Quincy pulled James into a hug. "I am sorry Tommy said those things to you. Some people cannot understand that family is about love, not just blood. But you know the truth now, and what you do with it is up to you." "I do not care about that other man," James said, his voice muffled against Quincy's shoulder. "You are my pa. You have always been my pa. And you are my son, always." Adelaide finally moved forward, wrapping both her boys in her arms, crying quietly. They sat like that for a long time, the three of them holding each other under the stars. After James went to bed, Adelaide turned to Quincy. "Thank you for handling that so perfectly." "He is my son," Quincy said simply. "That has never been in question, not for me. I hope it is not in question for him anymore either." "I think you settled it." Adelaide kissed him softly. "I love you so much, Quincy Steadman. I love you too, now and always." The years continued to roll by, marked by joys and challenges in equal measure. There was the year a late frost killed most of their garden, and they had to rely on preserved food and help from neighbors. The year Thomas got kicked by a horse and broke his arm, and Adelaide nearly went mad with worry. The year Emma fell in love with Carlos's son Miguel Jr., and Quincy had to come to terms with his daughter growing up, but there were wonderful years too. The year James won first prize at the county fair for his horse. The year Lucy learned to read and discovered a love of poetry that surprised everyone. The year Quincy and Adelaide celebrated their 10th anniversary with a renewal of vows at the Mission Church, surrounded by their children and friends. Adelaide sometimes thought about Thomas Harrison, the man who had set all of this in motion by abandoning her. She did not hate him anymore. How could she, when his cowardice had led her to Quincy, to this life, to this family? In a strange way, she was almost grateful to him for disappearing. If he had stayed, she would have married him and been miserable, tied to a man who did not truly love her. Instead, she had found Quincy, who loved her more deeply than she had ever dreamed possible. When James was 16, a letter arrived from St. Louis. It was from Thomas's sister, whom Adelaide had been friendly with before everything fell apart. She wrote to inform Adelaide that Thomas had died of pneumonia the previous winter. He had never married, never had other children, and had lived a dissolute life drinking himself to death in various cities across the country. His sister thought Adelaide had a right to know, in case she wanted to tell James about his biological father. Adelaide read the letter twice, feeling nothing but a distant sadness for the waste of a life. She showed it to Quincy that evening. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Nothing. Thomas Harrison does not matter anymore. He stopped mattering the day I married you." She folded the letter and put it away. "If James ever asks about him, I will tell him the truth, but I will not bring it up otherwise. You are the only father who matters." "All right." Quincy pulled her close. "Do you ever regret it, the way things happened?" "Never." Adelaide turned in his arms to face him. "I got you. I got our children and our life together. How could I possibly regret that? I just want to make sure you are happy, that this life is enough for you." "Enough. Quincy, this life is everything. You are everything." She kissed him deeply. "I love you more than I loved you yesterday, and tomorrow I will love you more than today. That is how it works with us." "I feel the same way," Quincy murmured against her lips. "Every day I wake up and think I cannot possibly love you more than I already do, and every day I am proven wrong." They made love that night with the passion of newlyweds, their connection as strong as ever after more than a decade of marriage. The children continued to grow and find their paths. James became Quincy's right hand on the ranch, a capable young man who balanced his father's boldness with his mother's careful planning. At 18, he married Sofia Rodriguez, a bright young woman from town, and they built a house on the southern section of the ranch property. Within 2 years, they had given Adelaide and Quincy their first grandchild, a boy they named Quincy Jr. Emma married Miguel Jr. when she was 19, and they moved to El Paso where he had found work as a carpenter. She wrote long letters home, full of descriptions of city life and news of the growing family. She and Miguel had 3 children in quick succession, all girls who Adelaide doted on during their visits. Thomas earned a scholarship to a teaching college in Austin, making Adelaide cry with pride. Her quiet, bookish boy was going to be a teacher, shaping young minds and spreading knowledge. He promised to come home for holidays and summers, and he kept that promise faithfully. Lucy, true to form, refused to follow any expected path. At 17, she announced her intention to become a horse trainer and began working with wild mustangs, gentling them with patience and skill. Men came from 3 counties away to buy horses trained by Quincy Steadman, and she earned a reputation as one of the best in the business. Adelaide and Quincy watched their children build their lives with a mixture of pride and bittersweet nostalgia for the years when they had all been small and at home. But the house never felt empty because there were always grandchildren visiting, always friends stopping by, always work to be done and people to care for. On their 20th anniversary, Quincy took Adelaide back to the spot where he had proposed, near the old mission church. The town had grown around it, but the place still held the same magic. 20 years, he said, holding her hands. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like you have been in my life forever. Both are true, Adelaide replied. We have lived a lifetime together, but I still feel like the scared girl who fell in love with a kind cowboy. I am not sure how kind I am, but I am definitely in love. Quincy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. I made you something. I am not much good at carving, but I tried. Inside the box was a small wooden heart, roughly carved but smooth to a satiny finish. Adelaide's name was etched on one side, Quincy's on the other. It is not fancy, Quincy said, suddenly shy. But I wanted you to have something that showed how I feel. My heart is yours, Adelaide. It always has been, and it always will be. Adelaide threw her arms around him, the wooden heart clutched tight in her hand. It is perfect. You are perfect. This life we have built is perfect. Not perfect, Quincy corrected gently, but ours. And that is better than perfect. They kissed as the sun set over San Elizario, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting from that first moment of connection. The years continued their steady march. Adelaide's hair gained threads of silver, and Quincy developed lines around his eyes from years of squinting in the sun. They moved a little slower than they once had, but their love remained as vibrant as ever. They still held hands while sitting on the porch in the evenings. They still made love regularly, finding joy in the familiar comfort of each other's bodies. They still laughed together, worked together, dreamed together. More grandchildren arrived, a whole new generation of Steadmans and extended family. Adelaide taught them to cook and sew and read. Quincy taught them to ride and rope and care for the land. Together, they passed on the values that had shaped their own lives: hard work and kindness, and the importance of standing by the people you loved. James took over most of the day-to-day running of the ranch as Quincy's knees started bothering him, but Quincy remained involved in all major decisions. Father and son worked together seamlessly, their bond as strong as any blood relationship could be. When Adelaide was 50, Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep. Adelaide mourned her friend deeply, the woman who had given her a chance when she needed it most, who had become like a mother to her over the years. At the funeral, Adelaide spoke about how Maria's kindness had changed her life, how one person's compassion could ripple outward and touch so many others. She saw me at my lowest and chose to help, Adelaide said through her tears. She taught me that our past does not define our future, that we are all deserving of second chances. I will carry her lessons with me for the rest of my life. Quincy held Adelaide's hand throughout the service, steady and supportive as always. That night, lying in bed, Adelaide said, "Promise me something." "Anything," Quincy replied. "When I am gone, tell our grandchildren about Maria. Make sure they know her story, that they understand how important she was." "You are not going anywhere for a long time yet," Quincy said firmly. "But yes, I promise. Though you will be around to tell them yourself, I am sure." But life has its own timeline, and 3 years later, Quincy suffered a stroke while working in the barn. James found him and brought him back to the house, and Adelaide nursed him through the worst of it. He survived, but the stroke left him weakened, his left side partially paralyzed. It broke Adelaide's heart to see her strong, capable husband struggle with simple tasks. But Quincy's spirit remained unbroken. He worked to regain his strength, determined not to become a burden. And Adelaide was there every step of the way, helping him relearn how to walk, supporting him through the frustration and setbacks, loving him through it all. "I am sorry," Quincy said one night, his speech still slightly slurred. "This is not what you signed up for." "I signed up for you," Adelaide replied firmly. In sickness and in health, remember, I meant those vows, Quincy, every word. I know you did. I just hate feeling useless. You are not useless. You are healing, and that takes time. She helped him settle more comfortably in bed. Besides, you took care of me through 4 pregnancies, countless childhood illnesses, and that time I got food poisoning so bad I thought I was going to die. It is my turn to take care of you. I love you, Quincy said, the words as sincere as the first time he had spoken them more than 2 decades earlier. I love you too, now and always. Quincy recovered slowly but steadily, regaining most of his mobility over the following year. He walked with a slight limp and could not work as he once had, but he found new ways to be useful, teaching the grandchildren, helping Adelaide with the bookkeeping, serving as an advisor to James. They celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and friends. It was a big party at the ranch, with music and dancing and food enough to feed an army. Adelaide looked around at the gathering, at the life she and Quincy had built together, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Happy? Quincy asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his good arm around her waist. So happy I could burst, Adelaide replied, leaning back against him. Look at all of this, Quincy. Look at what we made. We did good, he agreed. Real good. The years rolled on, bringing joys and sorrows as years do. Thomas married a fellow teacher and brought her home to meet the family. Lucy finally fell in love with a horse rancher from New Mexico and married him in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Emma's husband died in an accident, and she moved back to San Elizario with her children, finding comfort in being near family again. Adelaide and Quincy grew older, their steps slower but their love undimmed. They still sat on the porch every evening, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still kissed goodnight before sleeping. They still told each other, I love you, every single day. When Adelaide was 62, she developed a persistent cough that would not go away. The doctor in El Paso diagnosed consumption and told Quincy privately that Adelaide had maybe a year, possibly less. Quincy took the news like a body blow, but he kept it from Adelaide as long as he could, not wanting to burden her with fear. But Adelaide knew. She could feel her body weakening, could taste blood some mornings when she coughed. She did not tell Quincy she knew, not wanting to add to his worry. Instead, she focused on putting her affairs in order, making sure everything was arranged for after she was gone. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching yet another sunset, Adelaide finally broached the subject. I am dying, she said quietly. Quincy's hand tightened on hers. The doctor said we have time still. Some time, not much. She turned to look at him, this man who had been her whole world for more than 3 decades. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Do not give up after I am gone. Our children and grandchildren still need you. The ranch still needs you. You have so much life left to live, Quincy. Do not waste it mourning me. I will always mourn you, Quincy said, his voice breaking. You are my heart, Adelaide. I do not know how to exist without you. You will learn, the same way I would have to learn if you went first. She cupped his face, her thumb tracing the lines she knew so well. We have had the most beautiful life together. I would not change a single moment of it. You saved me, Quincy. You gave me everything I never knew I needed. And I am so grateful for every day, every hour, every minute we have had together. They both cried then, holding each other as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and the stars came out one by one. Adelaide's decline was gradual but steady. She spent her remaining months surrounded by family, making sure each child and grandchild knew how much she loved them, passing on her stories and her wisdom. She wrote letters to be opened after her death, little messages for birthdays and weddings she would not be there to see. Quincy never left her side. He helped her with everything, read to her when she was too weak to hold a book, held her hand through the pain. Their children took turns visiting, none of them wanting their mother to be alone, but Adelaide's eyes always sought Quincy, her anchor in the storm. On a quiet morning in early spring, with new life blooming all around the ranch, Adelaide woke knowing it was her last day. She asked Quincy to open the windows so she could hear the birds, to gather the children close. They came, all of them, crowding into the bedroom with their families. Adelaide looked at each beloved face, memorizing them one last time. "I love you all so much," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are my greatest joy, my proudest accomplishment. Take care of each other. Love each other. Remember what matters." She turned to Quincy last, this man who had been everything to her. "Thank you," she said, "for every moment, for every kiss and every laugh and every tear. Thank you for loving me when I did not think I deserved love. Thank you for being the best husband, the best father, the best man I have ever known." "I love you," Quincy choked out. "I love you so much, Adelaide. You made my life worth living, and you made mine possible." She smiled, that beautiful smile that had captivated him from the beginning. "I will be waiting for you when your time comes. We will have forever then." Adelaide closed her eyes, her hand in Quincy's, and slipped away peacefully, surrounded by the family she and Quincy had built together. The funeral was held at the mission church where they had been married, where they had renewed their vows, where they had baptized all their children. It seemed like the whole town turned out, everyone wanting to pay their respects to Adelaide Lancaster Steadman, the woman who had arrived with nothing and built something beautiful. Quincy spoke at the service, though he could barely get through it. "My wife came to San Elizario expecting judgment," he said. "She came carrying shame that was not hers to bear, expecting to be turned away, but she found acceptance instead. She found love. She found a home." His voice broke, "And I found everything I never knew I needed." "She was the bravest, strongest, kindest person I have ever known, and I will miss her every day for the rest of my life." James spoke too, talking about the mother who had loved him unconditionally, who had taught him that family was about choice as much as blood. Each of the children shared their memories, their voices thick with tears, painting a picture of a woman who had devoted her life to the people she loved. They buried Adelaide in the small cemetery behind the church, under a tree that provided shade in the summer. Her headstone read simply, "Adelaide Lancaster Steadman, beloved wife and mother, 1852–1914. Quincy kept his promise to Adelaide, though it was the hardest thing he had ever done. He continued to be involved in the ranch, continued to spend time with his children and grandchildren, continued to live. But a part of him was missing, the part that had been Adelaide, and everyone could see the hollow in his eyes where joy used to live. He still sat on the porch every evening, but now he sat alone, holding the wooden heart he had carved for her and talking to her as if she could hear him. He told her about his day, about the grandchildren's accomplishments, about how much he missed her. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he just sat in silence, feeling her absence like a physical wound. James worried about his father, seeing him decline in spirit if not in body. "You should move into town," he suggested one day. "Be closer to people, not out here all alone." "I am not alone," Quincy said. "Your mother is everywhere here. Every room, every corner, every inch of this land has her in it. I cannot leave that. She would not want you to be lonely, Pa. I know. And I am not lonely, not really. I have all of you and I have my memories. That is enough." 2 years after Adelaide's death, Quincy's heart began to fail. The doctor said it was the physical organ giving out, but Quincy knew better. It was the emotional heart, the part that had belonged to Adelaide, that had been broken beyond repair when she left. He did not fight it. He put his affairs in order, made sure James knew how to handle everything, said his goodbyes to each child and grandchild. And then, on a spring morning very much like the one Adelaide had died on, Quincy lay down in their bed, closed his eyes, and let go. They buried him next to Adelaide, their headstones side by side for eternity. James arranged it so their names faced each other, a final connection between the two people who had loved each other so completely. At the funeral, James told the story of how his parents met, how Quincy had seen a woman in need and offered help without judgment, how that simple act of kindness had blossomed into a love that lasted lifetimes. "My father taught me that real love is not about where someone comes from or what mistakes they have made," James said. "It is about seeing their true heart and choosing to stand by them no matter what. He and my mother had that kind of love, the kind that transforms everything it touches. They built this ranch together, raised us together, faced every challenge together. And now they are together again, which is exactly how it should be." The ranch stayed in the Steadman family, passed down from James to his children, and from them to their children. The story of Quincy and Adelaide became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of what real love looks like, what acceptance and compassion can build. The house was eventually renovated and expanded, but the original bedroom where Adelaide and Quincy had slept for so many years was preserved as it was, a small museum to their love. The wooden heart Quincy had carved sat on the dresser, still polished and perfect. Family members would sometimes sit in that room when they needed guidance or comfort, feeling the presence of their ancestors, drawing strength from the love story that had started it all. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right, people swore they could hear laughter on the porch, the sound of two people who had found each other against all odds and built something eternal from that first moment of compassionate acceptance. Quincy and Adelaide, together forever, their love story a beacon for all who came after, proof that judgment can be overcome by acceptance, that shame can be healed by love, and that sometimes the ending you did not expect becomes the beginning of everything you never knew you needed. Their legacy lived on in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who bore the Steadman name, in the ranch that continued to prosper, and in the town of San Elizario itself, where people still told stories about the cowboy who offered acceptance and the woman who came expecting judgment but found love instead. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth celebrating, a testament to the transformative power of compassion and the enduring strength of true love. The kind of love that does not care about past mistakes or future uncertainties, that simply is constant and sure and absolutely unshakable. The kind of love that Quincy and Adelaide had found together, and that their family would carry forward for generations to come. A precious inheritance worth more than all the land and cattle in Texas.